Okay, so I need to be able to click within the frame, so I'm going to need to have some sort of mouse listener for this. And I'm also going to need an action listener for the buttons. So let's implement those. Action listener and mouse listener. I'm going to import that, and add unimplemented methods to the bottom. So for the mouse, I've got the 5, mouse clicked, which I'm actually not going to use in mine. Mouse entered, which I'm also going to use, not going to use. Exited. Pressed. And finally, release is the one I'm actually going to use. So when I release in a particular spot on the graph, I'll actually create the circles. And down here, here's my action performed, which will be for the buttons. Let's make sure the buttons actually work. So I'm going to add an action listener for this, and the same with the edge. So down here, let me make sure that works. If the source is the node button, I'm going to say node. If the source is the other one, I'm going to say edge. Edge. Doing this now so that later on, there's node, there's edge. If I'm clicking a button and it doesn't seem to be responding, I can tell that, in fact, I have remembered to do my action listener, which is the most common thing that happens when buttons don't work, is forgetting that. Now for the frame, actually I think I'm going to make the panel listen for mouse presses, because I want the 0, 0 to be the upper left of the panel, not of the frame in general. If I set the frame to be the thing that had the mouse listener, this point up here would be 0, 0, and it would include this border and this border. What I really want is this point up here to be 0, 0 for my calculations. Panel.add mouse listener this. And when I release the mouse button, let's do e.getX plus comma plus e.getY. And away we go. There's the point. And this is pretty close to 0, 0. Good. Okay, so now the graph creation portion. So if I click the node button, what I'd like to do is make it so that the node button's background color shows that it's highlighted. And when I click in the panel, it creates a node. Now I'm going to have to somehow keep track of which state I'm in, like whether I'm clicking the node button was the most recently pressed thing, or the edge button was. And actually the edge has 2 other possible states, like I've clicked on the first circle or the second circle. So I'm actually going to create a variable that keeps track of my current state. What I should do at this point is actually make sure that I have some sort of labeling of my states as well. So I'm going to do a node create state. I'm going to have that be my default. So when I actually change this to state, I should actually say this is node create that I'm in right now. I'm going to set a 1 to be the edge first, which means like I need to click on the first circle. And then I'm going to have an edge second, which means I need to click on the second circle. The first one has already been selected. So if node create is my current state, I need to make sure that the node button is somehow highlighted. So I'm going to create a new set of color for this. Maybe I'll do green for the currently highlighted one and red for the other one. I gotta import color. Actually, I think I'm going to do something other than red. Maybe I'll just do the light gray. So if I run this, now I've got my green button and my edge button. When I click on the node button, besides, I no longer need to say node necessarily. What I'll do is I'll set the color there. And also make sure that the state becomes the appropriate one. Node button, node create. And then here, it's going to be similar, except it's going to be the edge button. The other thing I should do is make sure I set the edge button color here. That was weird. There. And then down here, when I click the edge button is going to become green. The node button is going to go back to light gray. And the state is going to be edge first. Cool. So that's the beginnings of this. The next thing I need to do is figure out, okay, what about actually clicking in this mouse area? So the idea is that if I'm in the node create state and I click over in the panel somewhere, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a circle and put the label from the text field in there. So if node is selected, I will have a label here, A for example, and I'll click here and it will create a little circle here labeled A. Since I'm here, let's just put some default text into my text field so that I don't have to type that over and over. So when I release here, I'm going to have to check the state. So if state is node create, I'm going to create a new node at this point. Now, in order to draw anything, Graph Panel is going to have to do that. And so I should probably start thinking about what I need to do to draw something. So to draw a circle, it's actually draw oval. And what it needs is, it needs an X, a Y, a width, and a height. A width and a height I can just create myself, but the X and Y position is going to matter to me. So I need to be able to store the X and Y somehow, as well as a label. I think I'm going to create a new class to do that. A circle class. Or maybe I should make this a node class. I need to rename the compilation unit to node, so it changes the name here. Your class and your file have to always match. So what is a node going to have? It's going to have an X position, a Y position, and a string, which is its label. Also, I'm going to need to be able to get and set all these things. It turns out Eclipse has a fancy way to do this. If I go to Source, Generate Getters and Setters, you can just select all these, say OK, and it creates all the getters and setters for you. Fancy, huh? So those are the things a node class is going to have, and I'm going to use those to keep track of the X and Y position of each of my things. So Graph Panel here is going to have an array list of nodes. And it's basically going to walk through each of those and draw each of those to the screen. So I'm going to create a new array list here. Array list is an utility. And when I have, instead of this draw line, what I'm going to do is a for loop that for each thing in my array list, which is node list.size, I'm going to draw an oval. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do draw oval at node list.get a dot get x. So it's going to go grab into my node list, grab a particular node, and then use its x position. So you can string these together to get what you want. Then I need to do the same thing with the y. I think I'm just going to manually put in the width and height for now. So if I run this, oops, I should not put that extra parenthesis there.